Hi, welcome back to the Albuquerque Film and Music Experience. I'm here at the Crown Plaza Hotel with writer, director, producer Mark Gordon. We're going to take a look at a clip from his new movie, and then we'll be back to talk to him a little bit more. So hang on.
New Mexico was the perfect place for Mabel to come to, I think, to really express herself and explore some themes in her life, and I think the way she wanted to live. The Native American culture, the Hispanic culture, the adobe architecture. And right at that moment, there's a sense that there's something here we need to preserve that's very, very precious, that's very real, that's still here, that hasn't been trampled by industrialism and American values.
The Taos Art Colony was going without Mabel, but she certainly broadened it and added diversity and that constant effort to create a salon and bring people to town. Taos was pretty isolated. It wasn't easy to get to. So Mabel had a strong influence on bringing those people to town, and some of them stuck.
I think she went to so much trouble to bring Lawrence to Taos because he was a significant figure internationally as a writer.
And so she had this wonderful vision where she saw the whole world fitted together. And she saw how every cell fit together and every bit was achieved, what it would be like when the whole world was united instead of split apart.
You look at Taos and you ask yourself the question, what would Taos be like today if Mabel had never come to Taos, if we had never heard of her? Dawsberg would never have come to Taos, very unlikely. All of the younger people who were hungry for this kind of new direction, that's one big change that you would notice immediately. Of course, the big one was that D.H. Lawrence would never have come to Taos, and the whole Lawrence industry wouldn't exist. And of course, Tony Lujan would never become Mabel's husband. I mean, just sort of unravel it going back a step at a time.
Our grandpa Tony, Antonio, and Mabel Dodge, they lived here, they made their life together here. And it's a start of their energy. The power of this place gives you the power back of who you are each time you come here. We're not here to change things. We're here to help Mother Earth. We're the caretakers of this area. We're medicine people. We're supposed to be from our hearts. Nothing matters after that, because you're not taking nothing with you. You're coming in. You come in with nothing on, you're going out with nothing.
Okay, we're back. My name's Tony Delaflora, and we're here with Mark Gordon, the writer, producer, director of the piece you just saw, the trailer from Awakening in Taos. Mark, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Tony.
The only thing is the bad timing. The movie's already shown at the festival, but it's going to be showing again very soon. So
yeah,
tell me about that.
We're going to be on PBS through PBS New Mexico, our partner, and then just once we have a broadcast date, we plan on having an Albuquerque premiere at the Chemo Theater, so that'll be coming out for people to see.
Great. Well, we'll talk a little bit, get another plug in before the end of this segment.
Thank you.
But anybody who lives in New Mexico for a while has probably heard the name Mabel Dodge Lujan, and that she is sort of the focus of this piece. And I don't think people, most people don't realize what a profound impact she had on the entire state. I'm curious, from your viewpoint, you were mentioning before we came back, this was a labor of love for 10 years or so. What about her inspired you to do this film?
Well, first of all, about 10 years ago when I came back to New Mexico, the film industry was coming to life, but everyone was shooting westerns. It was like Wyoming or Denver or the Wild West with and without aliens. And I was just trying to figure out why there's all these great stories, there's these great people here, there's great architecture. Why wasn't anybody making any films about people who live or lived here?
Right.
And then I came across this book called Edge of Taos Desert by Mabel Dodge Lujan, which was a total revelation to me because she was a social activist, she was an independently wealthy writer, she was an art patroness, she was a champion for women's rights, she was a champion for Native American rights, and she was able, through her marriage to Tiwa Indian Tony Lujan at Taos Pueblo, she was able to use some of her social activism that she'd learned in Greenwich Village to help fight legislation that would have taken 600,000 acres away from the natives of New Mexico,
right.
A sacred land that had been in their possession since the Spanish. And so I just thought, what a great story, great characters. She's been married 4 times, but her 4th marriage lasts 40 years.
Wow. Okay.
And is she spends her whole life looking for love and finally finds it with the Tiwa Indian in Taos Pueblo and changes her life. And then she was very well connected, and she brought all the modern artists out like D.H. Lawrence, Dorothy Brett, Ansel Adams. Georgia O'Keeffe spent her first 2 summers with Mabel.
Right.
Very well connected. She had a way of kind of intersecting with history. And I thought, this is a great story. New Mexicans should know about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, her circle of friends is pretty astounding when you think about it.
Yeah,
all the writers and intellectuals.
She lived in Europe. She and her husband had a de Medici villa in Florence. She met Gertrude Stein in Paris in about 1903, met Picasso, Matisse, and was totally ahead of the curve in terms of what the trends were in modern art. And she brought that to Taos, where we had the Taos Society of Artists, who were brilliant illustrators and romantic
Right.
landscape artists, and she ended up bringing the modernists, and everyone was transformed. The modernists that came were changed by the landscape and by the
Right.
the relationships with the artists, and the Taos artists became modernists.
Right.
And a lot of people stayed, like Dorothy Brett and Andrew Dosberg. So it's really a compendium of modern art in New Mexico. And Mabel wrote 1,600 pages of memoirs and wrote the first book on the Taos artists.
Yeah, and the overflow from that ended up, a lot of it was part of the Santa Fe art colony.
Yes.
And we all know what Santa Fe is today in terms of a powerhouse of an art center. But that was partly a result of the people she was bringing out here.
And if you think about it, 1917 she moves there. It's a 3 or 4 day train trip from New York or San Francisco, and then a 17-hour drive from Santa Fe to Taos.
17
hours, yeah. Because
Wow.
part of the time you were trying to pull your Model T out of the sand or the mud, and I didn't even know where they got gas. They had to bring it with them. But it was a hard place to come to, and she managed to bring people from all over the world.
Yeah, that in itself is pretty astounding. You had mentioned before, you of course spent lots of time researching this. Tell me about that process.
Well, at the very beginning, I found this book and I fell in love with it, and I thought it would make a great narrative film. But I thought maybe I should do a little research. I'll do this little documentary film, and then I'll have it, have all the research for the dramatic series or dramatic film. And it took 10 years. There was she wrote 1,600 pages of memoirs. She's a character or mentioned in over 100 books. Her biographer, Lois Rudnick, has written about 4 books about her. And early on, I got to know Lois, and Lois was a stickler for researching.
Yeah.
And so she kind of got the bug in me. I felt I had to read everything.
She's kind of looking over your shoulder. If you screw up, you're going to hear about it, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah. And she would actually, she was on our list when we would distribute the versions of the script, and I would always get a carefully rewritten copy back from Lois. And, so she was very, very helpful and instrumental. And of course, we developed this in partnership with PBS New Mexico. So our executive producer is Michael Kamens,
Right.
whom you're working with on your projects.
Right.
And he was very instrumental, and I'm going to call him a co-author of the script, because he really helped me get the story structure down.
Right.
Originally, it was a 200-page script. Now it's we have a director's version that's 1 hour, and the broadcast version is 56 minutes and 40
Right.
seconds.
Right.
And with what we've left out of this documentary, there's enough for 7 or 8 episodes of a limited series that we playfully call Downton Pueblo.
That's great. So tell me about the film itself. I have not, unfortunately, I haven't seen it, but does it pick up right in 1917, or where?
Well, it's actually cradle to grave for Mabel.
It is?
It starts with her
great.
birth in 1887 in Buffalo, New York. She comes from a wealthy but repressed Victorian family, and she has everything you could imagine except a feeling of love and belonging. And she spends her whole life trying to find love. She's married 4 times. Her first husband got killed in a hunting accident right after their baby was born. She married a second time to an architect, and that wasn't quite right. And then she married a painter, Maurice Stern, and she sent him alone on their honeymoon to Santa Fe to paint the Indians, and he begged her to come out here. And just before she left, she had a dream where she saw her third husband's face replaced by this dark Indian face with wide, hard eyes.
Okay.
And she gets to Taos, and 2 weeks later, she goes to the Pueblo. She hears this music and singing, and she's drawn to this house. She's invited in. This Native American is singing and drumming facing the fireplace, and she sits there, and when he turns around, it's the man that she dreamt about. It was Tony Lujan, and he had had dreams about her as well. So there's this great love story that takes part in it, and it's interesting, and there's lots of twists and turns to the story.
Yeah, yeah. And it must have been hard, as you say. I know how many pages, 200 pages of script is. That's a lot. So you had to kill your babies, as we say in the business.
Kill the beautiful babies in order to make a stronger film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as you say, maybe there's a sequel. Maybe there's something else.
We're serious about doing a series next. Right now, we're going to be releasing this to PBS, and we'll start in New Mexico, and we have. We're working with KNME and a distributor to get it into all of the stations across the country.
Now, you mentioned, of course, the love story, which is a great thing to have in a documentary like that. Did you get more? I'm assuming you got a better sense of who she was, what she would have been like to be around, how she interacted with people. What?
Well, one of the things that really helped us a lot was we were contacted by Tony Lujan's great-grandson, Blue Spruce Standing Deer, and he had been with them. They died when he was about 19, and he was like the favorite grandson that was always around, and he modeled himself after his great-grandfather. We spent a lot of time with Standing Deer, and he gave us a perspective. Up until we met him, we had a number of white writers talking about this silent, dignified Native American who would say, "Me go Pueblo now." And we thought, that's going to give the wrong message.
Right. Yeah.
So we had all of his dialogue translated into Tiwa, and his great-grandson reads the Tiwa with English subtitles, so you get a sense that this wasn't some kind of illiterate person. This was a very intelligent,
Right.
sophisticated man from a different culture.
Yeah.
And the ironic thing is, with Mabel writing all every day and writing 1,600 pages of memoirs, there's no written language in Tiwa. He didn't read or write.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
and when you hear the Tiwa spoken, you wonder, how did they spend 40 years together? They must have been able to read each other's thoughts.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. Anything else you learned in the course of all this research that you didn't know that really surprised you, or?
Well, I really didn't realize how important Taos was as an art center in the development of American art and American modern art. They would say with the Southwest that the artists no longer needed to go to Europe because we had our own authentic, language. We had the Native Americans. We had the incredible landscape and light in Taos, and it's just amazing. It was very remote, but Carl Jung visited. And he thought that the Taos Pueblo Indians were among the healthiest individuals that he had met, because they each believed that they're personally responsible for their religious practices, and that their religious practices keep the sun and the moon in their orbits. Mm-hmm. So if I'm not in spiritual harmony, the universe will be out of.
Right.
And so in terms of a self-esteem, he felt that they were very, very healthy people.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it must have been eye-opening for all the people she brought out here. I mean, this was such part of what I'm researching in my piece on the Santa Fe Art Colony. This was such a wild, considered exotic place. Mm-hmm. It was a place that had not only ruins of ancient civilizations, mm-hmm. archaeology, but you actually had the living culture here. Mm-hmm. And it was considered as exotic as going off to Tahiti or something to come here. So that must have been just an amazing experience for anybody that she brought out here to be part of that.
Well, one of the tenets of the modern artists was that they were looking back at primitive art. Picasso's work looks like African sculpture, and for Mabel to come out here and to see that these cultures this so-called primitive cultures were still alive, she became very interested in supporting the artists and the craftsmen and the potters, and was one of the first people to really begin collecting the Native American art and kachinas. And Andrew Dosberg started going from door to door, and he would collect the retablos, the primitive religious art. Right. And of course, the U.S. government was worried that he was going to be fomenting a rebellion. That's what they thought he was going door to door doing, but he was really just buying.
And in Taos, you never know.
Yeah, they were afraid
They've got their history up there.
They thought that they were going to bring the Mexican army right up the Rio Grande Gorge and take over, but that never happened.
Yeah. Great. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up here in a second, but Awakening in Taos, tell us again where people are going to be able to see that.
Okay, well, first of all, the DVDs have been released and they're available on awakeningintaos.com.
Okay.
We may have to stop selling them for a while when they're being broadcast. They'll probably do some pledges with.
Right.
So sometime in the next month or two, we'll have a broadcast date. And as soon as that happens, we'll have an Albuquerque premiere, and we'll get a lot of publicity on that. I don't know the dates yet.
Could they go to that website to find the dates, or where would they be able to?
They could go to the website awakeningintaos.com.
Okay, for the premiere screening, and then the actual air date on PBS is not determined at this point.
No, we'll know soon.
Great. Well, Mark, thanks so much for sitting down with us. Appreciate it.
Tony, thanks for inviting me in.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome. The movie, again, is Awakening in Taos. We've been speaking to writer, producer, director Mark Gordon. Check this film when it's showing. Hopefully, it'll be showing around the country and not just in New Mexico, but we'll get it out there. Anyway, we are still live from the Albuquerque Film and Music Experience. We'll have some more guests coming up shortly, so stay with us.